This is a much more receptive energy that feels a lot more calm, that feels a lot more easy. And I think this will bring a lot more balance to everything that's going on. How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for January 23rd through the 29th. And as you can see, Big Mike is back in town. So if you're just listening to this, the audio quality should be way better than the past few weeks have been. Anyway, also, you're probably noticing I'm not wearing my usual button-up shirt. It's snowing in Denver, and it's just too cold for that shit today. So this week is not the biggest week ever. However, what I like about weeks that don't have major astrological transits is just, for one, Mercury's direct now, Mars is direct. There's going to be this really nice feeling of everything just starting to move forward. So you don't have to worry about big astrological transits getting in the way of you having that momentum to move forward. However, we do have a lovely transit of Venus moving into Pisces. So let's go ahead and get started with the week. On Monday, we're starting off with the moon ingressing into Pisces, and it will first make a square to Mars, and then it will sextile Mercury. So again, a lot of this week is just lunar transit, so very easy, not too wild of transits today or this week. As the moon enters Pisces, the same, and also too, if you see me looking right here, my TV that I usually have right here for like the weatherman green screen status is of course not working, because why would it work? Anyway, the moon's ingressing into Pisces, and I say the same thing typically. I try to be pretty consistent with my delineations, but the moon, we're talking about our emotions, how we feel day to day, and it's in Pisces. It's a little whimsical. It's a little all over the place. That could be good for some, that could be bad for others. The reason I think it would be good is as the moon enters Pisces, there is this kind of free-flowing, easy feeling. We're just getting out of this new moon in Aquarius, so the moon is starting to wax. The moon is starting to gain in light. There is some momentum coming up here. And the moon in Pisces is really kind of asking you to, think about your feelings almost in a sense. Not in the moon in Gemini way, where the moon in Gemini is like communicate your feelings and explain to everyone exactly what you're feeling, or sometimes you just have to talk things out in order to understand how you feel. The moon in Pisces is much more explorative, but it's much more introvert. So as we go into Monday, there's this kind of introverted aspect, but it is kind of feeling a little bit all over the place and not chaotic or neurotic, but just kind of exploring what your options are, maybe doing this, maybe doing that. But the more difficult transit is when the moon, sorry, I've got to get used to pointing where I'm looking at here. The moon is going to be making a square to Mars for the most part of the day. And this is where it can feel really distracting. We are eventually going to be having Venus, when she goes into Pisces, make a square to Mars. So kind of pay attention to Monday, because you'll be kind of having a revisit of this energy once we get to the full moon in Leo, but that's in like 2 weeks from now. As the moon makes a square to Mars, the moon in Pisces can kind of get distracted. I don't reference Lego Movie a lot in my recordings. I don't know why. I love Lego Movie. Anything Pisces reminds me of Unikitty, where if you've never seen the movie, they go to all these different universes, and there's this one universe where everyone's like raving and it's all about like love and light. That really reminds me of like moon in Pisces. And so the moon in Pisces is like, distracted by this, distracted by that, wanting to, what's interesting about Pisces too is that it's very circumstantial with its environment. Like if you have a very bad, down, negative energy environment, the moon in Pisces just like gets way too overwhelmed with that and needs to like find a private place to calm their energy down. Now, the reason I bring this up is as the moon makes this square to Mars, Mars in Gemini is very like, let's go here, let's go there. I want to do this, I want to do that. It's very distracted, but the moon in Pisces might be like too engulfed by its environment to kind of move forward. And so there will feel like there's this kind of distraction, or maybe not motivation to do things, but just kind of like emotionally all over the place to where you can't actually focus your energy somewhere. And so I always like to say, the best way to get out of your head is to, do something with your hands. But this is one of those days where you just want to do one thing. Like if you're trying to conquer 10,000 things on the beginning of the week on Monday, you might feel really overwhelmed and distracted, and it might be easy for you to distract yourself and to avoid it, and to, moon in Pisces is like getting lost in a book on accident, or going to a coffee shop and actually not doing any of your work and just scrolling on social media. However, after the moon makes a square to Mars, and there's this kind of rambunctious distraction energy, the moon will then make a sextile to Mercury right here, where once, with Mars and Gemini, it's like you don't have to just do something and get it done right then and there. Anytime you can just knock something off the list, for example, something I've heard a lot about, and I also really agree with this, is if you want to create an environment of success, or if you really want to work on your own positive mental attitude, you want to start your day off with as many wins as possible. And so, like, when I'm killing it, like, right, but this is me recording before the new moon in Aquarius. I'm getting my shit together for the new moon, as I always fucking say. But the way that you want to start things off, it's like, if you want to wake up early, get that done. You go to the gym first thing in the morning. You make your coffee, you make your breakfast. And it's all about how many things can you knock off your list first thing in the morning. Because if you start your day off with a bunch of wins, it makes it much more difficult for you to have a shitty day. Or if something does happen in your day that is shitty, it's harder for it to affect your attitude or your emotions because you've already had so many wins. And so I think as the moon's making the square to Mars, you don't need to get everything done. Like, if you're feeling overwhelmed with all of your plans, just do one little thing to knock something off the list or to get you one step closer to where you need to be. And I think after that, as the moon makes the sextile to Mercury, there is this like, hey, I couldn't get everything done. I was a little distracted. I had to do this, I had to do that, but I was able to at least achieve a part of my plan. And, for example, like, I'm a creative person. Sometimes my work involves doing clients. Sometimes my work involves doing research. Sometimes my work involves doing all types of things. But then, when days like this for me, I just go, like, for example, I'm making a couple of long form videos like about Saturn and Pisces, and I'm doing a full how to read your birth chart video. And there's a lot of creative things I have to do with that, where for me, for example, I might spend this day just doing something creative that isn't necessarily like logical focus work, but something that I can kind of just, play around with, have some fun with, that is a part of my goal, but that isn't necessarily all of this intense work where I have to super focus on something. And so Monday, just find a way to check something off the list and keep the plans going. As we move into Tuesday, the moon will then sextile Uranus and it will conjoin Neptune. And this is the same day that the sun sextiles Jupiter. In fact, I actually didn't write this down as one of the highlights. However, I would argue that this is a smaller highlight. It's a feature of this week, so to say. As the moon makes a sextile to Uranus, look, we're talking about a sextile to an outer planet, and we're talking about the moon. It's not like the biggest deal ever, but Uranus, we're talking about innovation, ingenuity, rebellion, freedom, all of that fun stuff, right? It's in Taurus, so we're talking about values. Like, what's so interesting about Uranus and Taurus is like this whole Uranus rules like innovations in technology a lot of the time. And in Taurus, we've seen the rise of like Bitcoin. Yeah, Bitcoin's been around forever, but it really got into the public's eye when Uranus first ingressed into Taurus, which was around 2018. Same thing with what I've noticed the most about Uranus and Taurus is with the vegan stuff, how much innovation and how much more publicity vegan foods have become. Like, this is where we've had the beginning of Beyond Burger and the Impossible Burger or whatever the other ones are. And this is Taurus, right? We're talking about value. We're talking about food in a lot of ways. And so I bring this up to kind of just get a better idea of Uranus and Taurus. We're talking about ingenuity when it comes to value, when it comes to stability, when it comes to nourishment. And so what you want to do is, of course, you want to look at wherever Uranus is at in your chart. Depending on what house is in is going to give you the context of what Uranus is kind of doing. But as we're making this long 7 year transit of Uranus in Taurus, there's a lot of ingenuity and a lot of freedom and a lot of rebellion and innovation around what you value. Again, regarding, it's more specific to what house it's in. But as the moon's in Pisces making the sextile to Uranus, there is this sort of being able to lean into this longer term, trying different things, doing something different here, doing something different there. And just, this is all about really trying new things, right? As the moon makes that sextile to Uranus in the morning of Tuesday, try something new, try something different, do something that's much more of a long term, like what you're trying to do different, not necessarily like I'm trying to do something today, but like long term, what are you trying to do something different? Like, for example, if you wanted to invest in Bitcoin, and you haven't yet, maybe this would be a good time to start dollar cost averaging or something like that. But after the moon makes this sextile to Uranus, the moon will then be conjoining Neptune all day long, and this won't really happen till later in the evening. But as the moon conjoins Neptune, again, for those that have been watching me for a while, I love talking my shit on Neptune. And there's a good side to it and a bad side to it. The good side to Neptune is, when you talk about, for example, one of my favorite ways of explaining Neptune is through like psychedelics. Like, if you've never done a psychedelic before, maybe it could be, or for example, like the people that do like ayahuasca, like all, the people, like all the tech people who have never done anything spiritual, they go to like Central America and they do ayahuasca for the first time. And they're like, I'm spiritual now. And Neptune, like sometimes those opportunities can be good for you to see things different, for you to see things in a contorted way, for you to, and also too, I think I referenced this a few weeks ago about a Quentin Tarantino clip I saw about him talking about the magic of cinema. And there's something where you allow yourself to really be engulfed by a story or by a piece of media that can be really inspiring. And so I think as the moon is conjoining Neptune, this is really helpful for things like, again, getting engulfed in media. Like sometimes if you're just binging out watching a movie, that can help your creative process. That can help you, be much more positive about your world or see things in a different way. That gives you a lot more hope. The bad part about Neptune is just, it's not reality. That's the hard part. It's, the movie, it might be nice. You might watch a rom-com and be like, oh, love is out there. But then you have to understand, the moon conjoining Neptune is getting a little lost in the sauce, getting a little bit too distracted with it, getting a little bit too, having rose-colored glasses on everything. So I think on Tuesday, it's like, for an example, when you're watching the movie, let the movie, move you. Let it do something to you emotionally, but then don't attach that same, don't have that expectation on your own life just because you saw it in a movie. The movie's fake. The movie is just allowing you, or at least trying to tell a story and to tell a feeling that the director or the writer wanted to give to other people, and allow that feeling to come up, but just don't expect that to be reality. Have that healthy detachment between what you're seeing in your creative vision versus what reality of that is actually going to look like. And what I like about Tuesday, again, is the sun's going to be sextiling Jupiter. This is, again, it's a sextile. So a sextile is a very easy, harmonious aspect. A lot of people get really confused about the aspects in astrology. And all of the aspects do is they show the relationship between two planets. So the sun is in Aquarius right now. It's in detriment. The sun rules our willpower and our sense of identity. And you have to think, the sun gives us all of this life here on Earth. And it's Aquarius season. Like right now, it's like snowing here in Denver. There's no sunlight. It's super cold. And so that can, again, when you're not getting your vitamin D, that can take away literally like your immunity to things. That can affect your health. That can affect your hormones and how happy you are. And so it's difficult to feel, full of life and feel, vigorous when the sun's in Aquarius, right? However, as it sextiles Jupiter and Aries, there is this motivation factor. Jupiter is all about our beliefs. Jupiter is all about hope and faith. And now that it's back in Aries, there is this big push to be like, I did that podcast about Jupiter and Aries, which you guys should check out on the delineation. And Jupiter and Aries is like, what do you believe about what your abilities are, and how much are you just going to pretty much gas it and not think about it? When you get too far in your head and you overthink it, it's easy to self-sabotage, versus Jupiter and Aries is like, you just kind of have to go. And I think as the sun's in Aquarius sextiling Jupiter, there is this healthy amount of like, hey, I don't have the energy for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. You know what I mean? If you're always betting on having the if you have to watch the inspirational videos and the motivational videos to like get off your ass and do something, that's not sustainable, because there's going to be days where you don't want to do it, but it's the days that you don't want to do it are the days that you're going to get the most out of it. And that's what I really see here on Tuesday as far as the sun sextiling Jupiter is like, just get out of your own way. You may not have that motivation, but if you continue on with it, it will be much more rewarding in the long term. And again, the moon's sextiling Uranus. This is a great day to just do something different, be innovative. And as the moon conjoins Neptune, there is this ability of like seeing things in a rosy way that might be more helpful. As we get to Wednesday, the moon will then go into Aries and it will conjoin Jupiter and sextile Mars. So this is where, like I said, for Tuesday, when you just kind of do it anyway, even if you're not motivated, the motivation really comes on Wednesday. As you can see, the moon's still in Pisces right here, so the moon won't enter Aries until about the afternoon. But once it does, it's going to be applying to Jupiter all day. The moon, we're talking about, again, our day-to-day, our emotions, what we're invested into. And the moon's in Aries. It's supercharged with action. It's like, we want to be confrontational. We want to take aggressive action. And as it conjoins Jupiter, I think that motivation comes back, right? On Tuesday, if you don't have that motivation, you do it anyway. Wednesday, you'll be like, man, I killed that. Like, even though I didn't want to do it, I did it anyway. And now I feel great. And that's what Wednesday is about. The moon's going to be conjoining Jupiter, feeling, inspired, feeling courageous, feeling bold. And after the moon makes that sextile, conjoins Jupiter, it's going to be sextiling Mars. Where Mars in Gemini is like, what I like about Mars in Gemini is like juggling. Like, one of my favorite sayings for Mars and Gemini is like, it's, what's that saying? Master of none, jack of all trades, master of none. And I think when you try to put all of your bets on one thing, it's much more riskier, versus if you hedge your bets and you put as many irons in the fire as possible. When one of those fails, it's not catastrophic. You still have other options to go and do things. And as the moon makes this sextile to Mars, there is this energy that kind of comes up about like, okay, cool, I can do this now. I can do this now. I'm starting to understand what actions I need to take. So Wednesday looks much more positive in terms of just taking the blunt action and feeling inspired, and then that inspiration kind of pouring into being able to handle this, being able to handle that. It's Mars and Gemini. This might be a much more aggressive day. Like you might feel a little bit more like, I don't want to say on edge, but just kind of more like pushy and more confrontational, which I think is fine. But just make sure you're placing it in an area of your life that you're actually going to get something out of and that isn't a drain to you. Really like Wednesday. Thursday, though, is when the energy really shifts for the week. And we'll have this energy shift going on for the next few weeks. The moon will square Mercury, which isn't the worst thing ever. But Venus enters Pisces. And this is, again, I'm not doing highlights at the beginning of the week. We're going to be doing highlights here, just underlined so you guys know what they are. But Venus moving into Pisces is really nice, in my opinion. I mean, I think every astrologer would probably agree. So let's first talk about this moon transit. The moon will make the square to Mercury, where the moon in Aries just wants to supercharge and invest everything, right? Be like, I want to do this, I want to do that. As it squares Mercury in Capricorn, there's this healthy, I just recorded a TikTok type video about the aspects. And by the time you're watching this, I don't think it'll be posted. It'll be posted soon. But the way I like to talk about squares is like squares are like when things can get in your way, but also it's kind of like if you're owning let's say you own a company or you're this really big person in a company. If you have yes men all around you, it's easier for you to fail and it's easier for you to have, things not work out because everyone's too afraid of, saying no to you that idea is stupid or that it won't work. You want people around you that can challenge your ideas and that can challenge your way of thinking to where you can get the result that you're looking for. And that's what I like about Thursday, because I think as the moon makes the square to Mercury, there's something where you're like, you might be really invested into one way of doing things or one action you want to take. But Mercury in Capricorn is asking you, is that a part of the plan? Is that sustainable? Is that something that can be efficient in our system? And so on Thursday, there is this little bit of having a little bit of pushback, but in a healthy way. It's not super negative, but it can be negative if you're just expecting everyone to say yes around you. It looks much more positive if you're more open-minded to having your ideas challenged to see if there's a better way of doing things that you may not be aware of. But Venus enters Pisces on Thursday, and I know it's still in Aquarius right here at this time, but the reason why Venus in Pisces is such a big deal is Venus is exalted in Pisces. And if you're not familiar, there is domicile and there's exaltation. Domicile is when a planet rules a sign. For example, Saturn rules Aquarius. That is its home sign. Exaltation is like a honored guest in some place. Like the analogy I like to use is if you are throwing a party at your house, you are responsible for if anything breaks, if the cops come, if, for all the cleanup afterwards. Versus exaltation is like when your best friend throws a party and you pretty much have like honored guest privileges, but you're not really responsible for anything that, bad that happens. And so we're talking about Venus here. We're talking about love, romance, connection, indulgence, pleasure, beauty, art, music. And as Venus is exalted for all the creatives out there, this might be an easier time to lean into your creative process. This might be an easier time to express those parts of yourself. But this is really, I think, just kind of lightening up the energy. If we go back to Capricorn season, everything's been in Capricorn and Aquarius, these Saturn ruled signs, which have been very, realistic, very authoritarian, very serious, versus the energy really starting to lighten up here. I don't know if you can notice this. The Sun and Saturn are in a masculine sign. Jupiter's in a masculine sign. Mars is in a masculine sign. Funny enough, Capricorn is actually a feminine sign. A lot of people think that it's a masculine sign, but it's actually feminine. And so we do have Mercury in a feminine type sign, but I think that really changes as Venus goes into Pisces, because this is a planet being exalted, where if you felt too much of that, yin yang, that yang energy. Am I correct on that? Let me know if I'm correct on that. That like masculine driven energy. This is a much more receptive energy that feels a lot more calm, that feels a lot more easy. And I think this will bring a lot more balance to everything that's going on. I'm really curious though, if you guys have any plans about Venus and Pisces. You know, for example, Venus is moving into my 4th house of my living situation, and I kind of plan on doing a little bit of redecorating, maybe spending a little bit more money on my living situation. So let me know what you guys plan on doing for Venus and Pisces in the comments below. So Friday, we have the moon at the end degrees of Aries making a sextile to Saturn. Then the moon will ingress into Taurus and sextile Venus. Friday's looking good. Friday is, again, it's kind of like, I wouldn't even say Monday's bad, but it's just kind of like a all over the place. And then slowly things start ramping up to be a little bit more easy. So the moon is going to be making the sextile to Saturn, where I think as the moon's in Aries and we're still charged up on taking action, we're still charged up on being, confrontational. It's sextile Saturn. This is helping us in our long-term plans. This is helping us be more mature. This is helping us be more disciplined. So there is this kind of like rewarding feeling. It's kind of like, this might sound corny, but like, if you've ever had like a dad's job is not always to like, baby you and to like coddle you and to like, but like when you get that like, acknowledgement from an authority figure or from a father figure where it's like, you did a good job. You're like, yes, finally. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like what's going on here on Friday, where there is this sort of acknowledgement from an authority figure or from someone above you that helps you be more motivated, that makes you feel validated in what you've done. And it is very rewarding. And then as the moon enters Taurus, this is the moon is exalted in Taurus. So similarly to how Venus is exalted in Pisces, and Venus can do her job in ways that is pretty much unrestricted, the moon can do that in Taurus as well. And so this is feeling more secure. This is feeling more nurtured. This is feeling more stable. This is feeling more calm. Yeah, the North Node is there, so it can kind of be a little antsy. But the moon, as it goes into Taurus, it's going to immediately sextile Venus, where there is this really calming, really connected, really grounded, fun feeling about Friday. And it's all very feminine stuff. So not necessarily like, going out into the world and conquering this or conquering that. It's very like receptive, where, you can enjoy company. You can enjoy people around you. You feel nourished. You feel replenished with, relaxing or bringing people within you and having those connections. So Friday looks really good for just kind of baking in the energy and feeling much more stable, feeling much more calm, and having much more fun too. I think Friday's an excellent day to go and have some fun. As we get into Saturday, the moon will then make a trine to Mercury, and it will then conjoin Uranus. So on Sunday, we have 2 more highlights of the week, so we'll get to that in a second. But Saturday kind of tees that up for us. So as the moon makes this conjunction first to the North Node, there is this sort of, the North Node is like hyper consuming. So like when the moon's in Taurus, it's like, when you eat carbs, you can eat a whole fucking bag of chips like in a fucking second if you wanted to. You're like, this is good. Let me just go crazy with it. The moon in Taurus conjoining the North Node is like trying to get way too much out of the pleasure zone. Like it's kind of like binging, like not just a Netflix series, but like all of the seasons, where on Saturday, try not to binge, try not to overdo the comforting feeling. Do enough that's going to, that you need, but then know where to draw a boundary, know where to draw a line. As the moon then conjoins Uranus and trines Mercury at the same time, there is this sort of looking at things as like, okay, how can I create this stability and the security in this momentum? Something about Taurus is that it's a fixed sign. So the cardinal signs initiate things. The fixed signs stabilize things, and the mutable signs change things, right? All of the zodiac signs get their meaning from the seasons, right? So think Aries season is the beginning of spring. Here in Denver, I learned this last year, the tulips actually start to pop up first. In, March and April, it can still snow a lot, but you'll see the snow on the ground, but you'll see a really beautiful tulip pop up from the ground. And so that's kind of like, the Aries energy of like spring is beginning, or if you're in California, it's like spring is like already fucking summer by that point. But the moon in Taurus, it's like Taurus season is like spring is here, everything is growing, everything is abundant, everything is beautiful. And as the moon is in Taurus, it's like, how do we keep that consistency of what we just initiated? How can we keep that consistency of what we just started? And there's a part of this where the moon trines Mercury where it's like, how can I be sustainable with this while still following the plan that we have set during the Mercury retrograde in Capricorn over the past 3 or 4 weeks? But the moon's going to conjoin Uranus where, if you're not being ingenuitive and if you're not trying something different, this will feel very destabilizing. This will feel like a wrench is getting thrown in your way versus if you're open-minded to like doing something different. If you're open-minded, for example, with Uranus and Taurus, like being ingenuitive and innovative about what can comfort you and what can make you feel secure and stable. And it's like, if you are just thinking, oh, I don't want to work at all, work sucks. I just want to lay on the couch and that's my way of relaxing, which there's been, I mean, Cal Newport talks about this, I believe, in his work, So Good They Can't Ignore You, and Deep Work as well. I also think he talks about this in Digital Minimalism. Cal Newport's a great author. You guys should read some of his books. But he kind of talks about like this idea of like just relaxing on the couch and doing nothing is actually more harmful versus like, you want to be involved in something. Like it doesn't need to actually be like labor, but for example, like if you have a fun project that you want to do, like instead of your initial intuition of being like, let me just lay on the couch. I'm looking at my couch when I say this, like lay on the couch and do nothing. Maybe find a way to find comfort or like, for example, like something that I've been wanting to do for a long time is doing yoga. And that's something that I want to like, I've had an issue of like thinking about that as like a workout and a stress on my body, but I'm trying to shift my mind to where like yoga can actually be really relaxing and make me feel really good. And so, I mean, maybe here on Saturday, I go to yoga for the first time. I don't know, but I think you guys are picking up what I'm trying to say here. It's just about doing something different that's going to give you that comforting feeling and that secure feeling without it necessarily being like just doing nothing. You know what I mean? Because this is, again, we're still trining Mercury in Capricorn. We have to do something that's a part of the plan and a part of the system that we've been, renegotiating and going back over since, really the middle of December last year, the end of December last year. So, then we get to Sunday, and this is where we have 2 other highlights. The moon at the end degrees of Taurus will square Saturn. So this is where the uncomfortable feeling really kicks in, right? When you do something new for the first time, it's not always going to feel good. In fact, I can think of a perfect example of going off that yoga analogy, which we'll get to that as I go through. But we're going to also have Mercury make a trine to Uranus. This is Mercury's 3rd and final trine to Uranus, right? So there's been a lot of ingenuitive breakthrough ideas that we've had to solve whatever Capricorn issues that we've had. So if you look at your chart and you look at where that Mercury retrograde in Capricorn has been, where there's been this review or this reflection or this delay in stuff or some problems. For example, the guy that owns this house that I live in, he's a Libra rising. So Mercury retrograde in his 4th house. We had a huge sewage problem that we had to handle, which was like super annoying. Like, we had like a cold snap here, like right when Capricorn season started and the roots got to the sewer pipes. So we had to get an auger. There we go. We had to get an auger. We had to do all that stuff. There was poop everywhere. It was super grody, but we had to go and do that. Then we had like this Wi-Fi issue that went out randomly. And then we had this breaker problem where there was this hidden fan. This is a really weird house. There was this hidden fan that we couldn't find. And there are some other issues, but Mercury trining Uranus is there's this sort of like solution, this breakthrough solution that if you're ingenuitive and you can kind of, think creatively, that can really help you out. And so that's what the Mercury trine Uranus is about. But the sun is also going to trine Mars. And this is important because the sun makes a trine to Mars as Mars stations direct. So of course, Mars is already direct by now, right? We're starting to actually move forward again. Like I said, this is all stuff. We're kind of right back where we were in terms of fights and conflicts and drive and motivation, where we were back in early September. That's when Mars entered shadow. So there's something about that time we've revisited and we've worked out, and now it's time to move forward now that we have handled that problem. But the sun trining Mars is kind of like that green light from the sun of like, yeah, you have the willpower, you have the investment, you have the energy to move that stuff forward. But again, on Sunday, the moon will make the square to Saturn, where going to the yoga analogy, it's kind of like you have to get out of your comfort zone. And that's really the moon in Taurus squaring Saturn Aquarius. Like my fear is like, I have all types of fears of like, being judged or how people are going to think of me. I'm like this dude going to a yoga studio. I'm not fit for yoga. Like, look at me. And so like, if just using my analogy of like me going to like a yoga studio, I'd have to get over my insecurities or my fears of, judgment and authority figures and, the Aquarian social dynamic stuff. And the moon squaring Saturn is like kind of, the moon is in Taurus, so it wants to be comfortable. But as it squares Saturn in Aquarius, like there is no comfortability. Like there is a little bit of having to get out of your comfort zone. There is a little bit of having to, deal with things that maybe you don't want to deal with. But a lot of this is about, again, when it comes to squares, this is like a good check. This is like someone checking you real quick. It's like if you're just laying on the couch and you're like, oh man, this is great and amazing. But, then you just scroll, through social media and then all of those negative thoughts in your head start. It's like, is that really good for you? Maybe getting out of your comfort zone is a way that you can find comfort. Maybe doing something different is a way that you can find comfort. And so the moon squaring Saturn is just, again, no matter what, you're not going to be in your comfort zone. So if you're trying to just relax on a Sunday, it might feel like stressful that you can't do that. Maybe, you have like a husband or a wife that's like nagging you to do something and you can't just sit down. But, I would lean into that. I wouldn't just like, deal with the pressure and deal with like the annoyance of it and just kind of lean into it and accept it. But then as the sun trines Mars too, there's this sense of, we're where we were at. That's really hard to say. Back in September when it comes to fights, conflicts, issues, actions, energy, and we're starting to move forward on these things. And there is this kind of sense of, again, you may not want to do it. That's the sun in Aquarius. You may not have the motivation, you may not have the inspiration, but that's when it's going to give you the most out of it. When you don't listen to your emotions and you don't listen to what your head is telling you and you just do it anyway, it's so much more rewarding. And as Mercury makes that trine to Uranus, this is finding an innovative way to create the solution to go along the plan. It's like, if you have this plan to do something and you've run into this hiccup, rather than trying to throw the typical X, A, B, and C at it, maybe try to throw X, Y, Z at it. That's something different. That's something that maybe you wouldn't think intuitively that you would do. And you might have a much more creative solution. Again, this is Mercury's third time trining Uranus. So this isn't anything new. We've had to go back over these solutions quite a few different times. So anyway, as we get to next week, we have the full moon in Leo, which will be exactly squaring Uranus. There's parts of me that loves this full moon in Leo, but there's another part of me that's like, oh, it's squaring Uranus. It's going to really shake up a lot. So kind of be prepared for that. And we have Venus making a square to Mars. So Venus is now in Pisces. We're having fun. Connection and love is a lot better. But as it squares Mars, there's this kind of miscommunication of like what we want versus what we're doing during that same time. Now, the reason I brought up the moon in Pisces making a square to Mars is Venus is going to square to Mars in Pisces and Gemini. So think about whatever's going on Monday, because you're going to have a revisit to that next week. So I guess my final thoughts for the week. How do you guys like this graphic? I know the video thing is probably going to be in my face, but anyway, my final thoughts for this week are just simply, when we talk about 2023 in and of itself, the end of January and all of February is relatively chill. So if you've got a lot of things going on right now and you're like, Cameron, it's not chill. Oh, trust me. When you go into March and April and May and June, you're going to look back and be like, damn, February was super chill. We have a ton of stuff happening throughout the rest of the year. And so this is just kind of that time to, things are pretty chill right now. Take advantage of that time, right? When, if you're in the middle of a storm season, right? This is finally those days where the weather's not perfect, but the weather's not bad either. So you might as well take advantage of it. And so I think this week is just kind of, now that Mercury's direct, now that Mars is direct, really all of that forward. And this is also a waxing moon, right? So we're off that new moon. We had that refresh and that restart. Now we actually get to move forward with things. So that all looks really exciting in my opinion. So with that being said, make sure you like this video if you like this content. Make sure you comment. Let me know what your plans are for this week or what energy you're going to be going through this week. Make sure you like this. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Also, too, I'm on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. This video, I won't really call it a podcast, but this, the Astrology Report is available on Apple. It's available on Spotify. I should take the Twitter thing off. I've deleted my Twitter. And I think this is Odyssey and Rumble. If you're one of those people that don't really like to do the YouTube stuff, I am on Odyssey and Rumble too. So make sure you check those out. And with that being said, I love and appreciate you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.